seated.
Your Honor, before we continue with the cross-examination of Detective Holz, the state would be moving the admission of Exhibit 73, which is just a 8.5 by 11 size copy of the large exhibit of the phone records. It was previously marked. And I also moved Exhibits 74, 76, 77, 78, 79, and 80. These are compact discs that contain the full phone records for the various phone numbers that we've talked about, including the defendant, Andrea Wadinsky, and Stephanie Lowe and Eric Mahomes. There are two separate discs relating to the defendant and Andrea Wadinsky because records were obtained at two separate times for clarifier.
Any objection?
None.
Okay, those exhibits are received.
Thank you.
Are you still under oath?
May I, Judge? Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm going to not discuss with you this morning any matters, prior statements or matters related to Richard Hawkins and Andrea Wadinsky, if and until you're called later in proceedings, okay?
Okay.
Instead, I just want to talk to you for a brief period of time this morning about a handful of topics, most of which Mr. DeFore addressed with your testimony yesterday, okay?
Okay.
And I got them into just 5 sub-little categories, okay?
Okay.
First, this is one he didn't talk to you about. Clubs in Wausau back in 2010, nightclubs, okay?
Okay.
There was Breakaway, which we've heard testimony about.
Right.
Bruisers, by the way, and Breakaway northeast of Miss Lowe's apartment about 3 miles away.
Yes.
Okay. Bruisers was a nightclub southeast of Miss Lowe's apartment in Schofield. That's about 4 or 5 miles away, right?
Yes.
Paradox blocks, and that's where surveillance shows Miss Lowe was at in the evening of October 9, 2010, until she returned to Trenton Phillips. She returned with Trenton Phillips to her home where he dropped her off, right?
Yes.
All right. That is blocks from Miss Lowe's place, right?
Yes.
Okay. I mean, they drove, Mr. Phillips said, but it's really just a hop, skip, and a jump, right?
Sure. It could be walking distance.
Right. And then there's another tavern called Rock's Place that was just down the street from Paradox, right?
Yes.
All right. So that's in the same general vicinity of Miss Lowe's apartment, right? Rock's Place?
It's a little further, but same general vicinity, yes.
Well, wasn't Rock's Place about a block and a half from what was the Paradox?
A block and a half north,
Right.
yes.
Okay.
Further away from Miss Lowe's residence.
Okay. And Rock's Place served the public until 2:30 a.m. on October 10th, right? If you know?
Generally, I mean, obviously depending on their population in the bar at any given time, they might elect to close earlier, so I don't know specifically.
I mean 9th, Council, that's the Saturday, I'm sorry.
October 10th, did it serve the public until bar time 2:30 on October 10th, 2010?
That, I don't know.
But it's a bar, right?
Correct.
And I think you said yesterday the taverns in Wausau are open typically till 2:30 a.m. back in 2010 on weekends, right?
Sure, if they have clientele. Obviously, if there's nobody in there, they would close earlier.
Are Breakaway, Bruisers, Paradox, and Rocks, if you know, back in 2010, did they attract a similar type crowd, hip-hop crowd? If you know.
I don't know.
Gotcha. Next topic, okay? Let's talk about knives. Andrea Wadinsky testified, as I understood her testimony, that she believed the broken knife found with the body of Stephanie Lowe, which is Exhibit 225, you were here right when she said it was from her set because, like the other knives from her set, which was Exhibit 226 from the boat and Exhibit 264 from Torgerson's Jeep, you with me so far?
Yes.
She said they thought they were from her set based upon, as I understood her testimony, 2 factors. Number 1, each had staining on it, did she say? Do you remember?
I believe she said rust.
Rust. Okay. Each had rust. Well, you've looked at all 3. Rust stains?
Yes.
Okay. And she also said, because Torgerson told her, she says, that the knife used, the broken one, to kill Stephanie Lowe was from her set, right? She also testified to that.
Yes, and it was
Right.
still in her body, yes.
Right. Okay. Now, the knife, just so we get this knife situation clear, the knife from the boat, which is 226, trust me on these exhibit numbers, and the Jeep, which is 264, they each have that MSE and China markings on them on reverse sides, right?
Yes.
Right. MSC, Martha Stewart, every day.
Yes.
Those markings, MSC on one side, China on the other, are missing from the broken knife found with Miss Lowe, because one could guess that it broke off. That's the part that broke off, right?
Correct. The MSC and China logo are located near the handle of the knife, and that part conceivably broke off.
Right.
So it's not visible on the broken off piece of knife found with Miss Lowe.
Right, that I didn't consider that. You're right. The MSC and China isn't like in the middle of the blade, it's near the handle, right?
Yes.
On this design set that Andrew Wadinsky says she got in 2004 as a wedding gift, right?
Yes.
All right. During your investigation, were you able to learn, we don't have any information, do we, about the knife that was found with Miss Lowe that's missing the handle and missing the MSE China markings, you with me?
Yes.
Nobody ever, we don't have any information where that went to, right? Through your investigation?
Where the handle went?
Yeah.
No.
So you went to work with Martha Stewart in late, I think, the reports show in late 2005 to try and do some investigation to this matching of the broken knife with whatever Miss Wadinsky might have received in 2004, right?
Not Martha Stewart personally, but her company, yes.
All right. She may have been otherwise occupied back then.
Correct.
But her company, Martha Stewart, Omni Media or something like that?
Right, it had been sold to multiple different companies by that point.
All right.
And just for the record, I think council said 2004 and 2005. I think you meant 2014 and 15.
No, I was talking about when what I was referring to is when I said 2004, I was talking about when Miss Wadinsky got the knife set.
Yes, I attempted to gather information on the packaging of knife sets sold during 2004 and 2005 when she
Okay.
received
All
the
right.
sets.
Good. I just wanted to make sure the record's clear. Thank you.
Well, this wasn't easy for you, if I remember reading the reports.
No.
Right. Because something about how different companies started selling that stuff and changing their names and buying each other, things of that sort, right?
Yes.
But somebody good at Martha Stewart on the media said that she found a 14-piece set, tell me if I got this right, made in 2014.
2004.
2004, thanks. Damn. That she thinks may have been similar to the set Wadinsky received that year, right?
Right.
Miss Wadinsky. All right. But there was something different in what she found is the handles were different, but the set looked similar via blades, right?
Right, and I believe she explained that the stainless steel handle that we saw in the boat knife and the Jeep knife was also available with that set.
Okay, right. Okay. Yes. Now, you then did some comparison between the broken knife found with Miss Wadinsky, right?
Yes.
With Miss Lowe, it's going to be a tough morning, I guess, with Miss Lowe, and determined, based upon your eyes, that the broken knife most closely resembles the utility knife from the set the Martha Stewart representative sent you or talked to you about, right?
Yes.
So you looked based upon what? Configuration, that the broken knife closely matched the utility knife from that set that was sold in 2004, not the steak knives or any other knife within the set, right?
Correct, because the steak knives would have had a serrated blade, and the knife found with Miss Lowe did not.
Right. Well, was it just the fact that the knife found with Miss Lowe wasn't serrated and the utility knife wasn't serrated, or were there other things about those two items that made you think they were possibly similar?
The length of the blade and the width of the blade.
But it's difficult to determine what the length of the blade of the knife found with Miss Lowe was because it was broken, right?
Correct. Mhm.
Ms. Wadinsky reported to you on February 12, 2013, that she was missing a lot of her Martha Stewart everyday knives, right?
Yes.
She said including a large serrated knife, she said, right?
Yes.
And she said some steak knives, correct?
Yes.
Now the large serrated one, that's the one that was found in the boat, right?
I don't believe the one that was found in the boat was serrated. I think that was more of a butcher knife.
Okay. Well, we know that Miss Lowe wasn't found with a serrated knife, right?
Right.
All right. Did Miss Wadinsky ever tell you she was missing a utility knife from her set?
She couldn't say for certain what knives exactly were missing, just that a lot of them were missing from her set, so many so that she discarded her butcher block altogether.
Didn't she say, I was missing a lot of knives, including a large serrated knife and some steak knives? Isn't that what she reported on February 12, 2013?
I believe we had multiple conversations about this, and she wasn't able to recall
Okay.
exactly what knives she was missing.
Okay. Did law enforcement talk to any other manufacturer of knives other than Martha Stewart Enterprise?
Well, Martha Stewart every day
Every day.
had been sold multiple times over. We attempted to contact those companies to see if they had any information historically about knife sets sold in 2004 and 2005, and we were unable to get anywhere with those manufacturers.
Okay, well, I'm talking about other knife manufacturers like, you've heard of Cuisinart, right?
Yes.
Okay, was there any effort to compare the broken knife found with Miss Lowe with any knife produced by Cuisinart at any point in time?
No.
Okay. Chicago Cutlery is another manufacturer.
And also what I learned from this young lady at Martha Stewart every day is that generally all knives are manufactured in China, and the same knives are sold to multiple distributors, which would include Cuisinart, KitchenAid, etc.
Which are all available at local stores like Yonkers, Kohl's, or Walmart in Wausau. Right?
Correct.
Let's move on to the next topic that I've labeled Torgerson's clothes. You with me?
Yes.
All right. The jeans and tennis shoes that Torgerson is seen wearing around midnight at the Quick Trip on 6th Street and East Wausau Avenue, I have that address right,
Yes.
were the same jeans, or the same shoes and jeans he was wearing at 6:45 a.m. at the Quick Trip, formerly on Grand Avenue, right?
The jeans, I can't say 100% for certain. There was no real distinguishing markers, but the shoes definitely seem similar.
Okay. Okay. You're not sure if the jeans are, is that what you said?
I'm not sure.
Are you able to make out, and you're coming to this conclusion about the shoes, based on your eyes, looking at the two surveillance?
Yes.
Can you make out the brand of those shoes?
I don't recall off the top of my head. I would have to refer to my report.
Okay. There's a lot of those.
I know.
What about your report or the surveillance? Which would you rather have?
Perhaps both.
Okay. Well, you did about 1 million reports, so which one do you think we're talking about?
Well, let's start with the surveillance video, or stills.
Give me a moment, would you? Excuse me, Judge. Pardon me.
There should be 91 and 92, I believe, counsel.
Thank you, sir. May I approach, sir? Let's see if we can do this with the surveillance photos before we go report digging, okay?
Okay.
I'm going to show you what's been previously marked as State's Exhibits number 91 and 92. And those are the approximately midnight quick trip surveillance and approximately 6:45 quick trip surveillance, different quick trips, right?
Yes. Do you have an interior still of the quick trip surveillance around midnight?
Okay.
That would help me.
Okay. I think that's around too. May I approach? 93 is maybe what she's referring to. Yeah, I'm going to show you now. This is the interior quick trip at 1204 on 6th and East Wausau Ave. That's Exhibit 93. Does that help you?
Yes.
Okay. What brand are we talking about?
I can't tell from these
Okay, you need
photographs, but I can tell you what I'm looking at.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm looking at a large patch of blue on the front toe of each shoe, as well as the back side of each shoe. And it's like a royal blue color. Also the bottom of the shoe itself, or along the bottom of the shoe itself, is the same dark blue stripe.
So you're absolutely convinced he's wearing the same shoes at 12 o'clock a.m. as he is at 6:45 a.m., right?
It appears so to me, yes.
All right. See any blood?
I wouldn't expect to see the bottom of his shoe here.
I'm sorry?
His blood could be on the bottom of the shoe, which obviously I don't have available to me in these photos.
I'm just asking whether you've seen any blood at 6:44.
That would be difficult for me to tell based on the,
Okay, can't tell.
can't tell.
See any blood on the jeans?
Can't tell, they're dark.
Okay. In any event, you testified yesterday, you haven't found those shoes, right?
No,
And you looked at Andrea Wadinsky's residence for them
yes,
on Charles Street,
yes,
and I believe that those shoes were obtained from Ms. Wadinsky on November 7, 2011, right?
we received multiple pairs of Mr. Torgerson's shoes from her, yes,
Starting on November 7, 2011.
yes,
That would have been, we know, a year after Ms. Lowe's disappearance, right?
yes,
And then you weren't able also, and then you did some subsequent searches for those shoes at Mr. Torgerson's storage facility, right?
right,
And I believe that was pursuant to a search warrant executed on May 23, 2013, correct?
correct,
A year and a half after Ms. Lowe's disappearance, right?
right,
Now, you testified yesterday, you also were not able to find that striped polo shirt that Torgerson's wearing at the earlier quick trip at midnight, right?
right,
Because he's in the Stop Snitching t-shirt at 6:44, we know that, right?
right,
You looked for that striped polo in Miss Wadinsky's condo starting November 7, 2011, and Torgerson's storage units starting May 23, 2013, correct?
yes, correct,
Got it. But you did collect a bunch of jeans at various locations, Ms. Wadinsky's home and the storage facility, right?
right.
But you just aren't confident those are the jeans Torgerson's wearing as depicted in those video surveillance, right?
No, they're very generic. They appear to be either very dark blue or black.
Got it. I'm going to move on to another topic, okay?
Okay,
The October 24, 2013 trip to Wabeno with yourself, Lieutenant Kolb, Ms. Wadinsky, and Mr. Hawkins. You testified yesterday that the purpose of bringing these witnesses together was to achieve the goal of finding the burial spot and bringing Stephanie Lowe home, correct?
correct,
All right. Now, you wrote a 15-page single-space report of your investigative work on that date, remember?
yes,
Yeah. It was long.
Yes,
It was a long day.
it was.
12 and a half of that pages of that report concerns Hawkins and Mr. Hawkins and Miss Wadinsky reporting to you about what happened from the point Hawkins was at breakaway until Torgerson cleaned his Jeep, correct?
Yes,
And in your report, you write that the purpose of the trip was, our hopes in having them come together is to attempt to reenact the events of 10-10-10 to make the picture a little clearer about what happened during those early morning hours and into the late morning hours. You remember that? Talking about it?
yes.
Okay. I want to move on to the September 18, the next topic, September 18, 2014. I have it described the evening ride to the burial site, right?
Right,
You, Lieutenant Cole, and Torgerson in the back seat of a squad car.
yes,
Yesterday, we played a 4-minute, 6-second clip of a dialogue between you and Torgerson en route, right?
right,
In your report of the exchange, and this is, I believe, consistent with what's on the audio, you described the first part of the clip as you saying, I told Torgerson that if the day ever came that he was willing to tell us the entire story about that night, we'd be interested to hear it. I made reference to filling in some missing pieces of the puzzle. Sound right?
right,
That's both what you read in your report and I think what we heard yesterday, verbatim. Right?
right,
All right. Now, this assertion was made by you on September 18, 2014. That was long after you spoke to Andrea Wadinsky, right? Multiple times.
right,
Long after you and law enforcement spoke to Richard Hawkins, right?
right,
Rebecca Torgerson,
right,
Doug Koplitz,
right,
and Adam Smith.
right,
In response, Torgerson said, well, he said something about, I know some of the pieces, right? I know the pieces, something like that, right?
I believe he said, and who better to give you those answers? And I said, well, you. And he said, that's what I'm getting at.
And then he said, not everybody in this is an angel, right?
Right,
Nothing was ever intentional. Did I hear that right?
I don't know if that was the exact wording, but it was something like this whole intentional thing, though. You understand why I'm having difficulty with intentional homicide.
You don't remember him saying nothing was ever intentional?
It was something along those lines. I don't remember the exact words.
Do you remember then, you essentially said, well, talk to your lawyer, right?
So you might want to have your lawyer explain to you what intentional means.
And at that time, he was represented by a guy by the name of Daniel Sabakis, right?
Yes,
And then Torgerson said, I already know. Essentially, he says, oh, I already know, right?
right,
And then he said, he defined it as, he didn't say, I defined it as, but he then said, I know, he said, foreplan in your head in going after and completing it, right? He's going to say more, but he says that, right?
right,
Planning something, right?
right,
Dr. Steer yesterday, last topic, and then we're done. Yesterday, Dr. Steer talked about the autopsy. You were here for that.
yes,
And you, as law enforcement, I understand it typically were present for that, right?
yes,
You saw Dr. Steer remove Miss Lowe's clothing, right?
yes,
And that was part of his evaluation. Did he appear to examine the clothing that you saw
yes. You take them off piece by piece
and give him a look?
and give them a look. I believe we laid them out on the floor on some paper.
Thank you, Detective. That's all I have.
Can you redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, a few things. Which one on the, Elmo? Detective, I'm going to put up, and I want to ask you some questions, since there were some questions about markings on the knives. I just want it to be very clear, and we can point out for the jury exactly what markings we're talking about and exactly where they are, so that there's no question about that in anybody's mind. I'm going to start with Exhibit 226, which is the knife from the boat. All right? And I'm going to place that here, and I'm going to zoom in on the particular marking we're talking about. Hopefully it'll show up once we get close and not be too... Yeah, I don't know if this is going to work very well. Let's zoom back out again and just... And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the knife to you, and then I'm going to have you look at the spot where the MSE and the China are on the knife, and then I'm going to point to it on the screen. It may not be visible very well. This is the MSE here on
Right.
one side, and then the other side is where China is, correct?
Right.
Okay. Well, let's just point to it on here and see. Just have to have it. Is this where the MSE is? Right in this spot here?
Yeah.
And then China on the other side is right here, almost right at the handle?
Yes.
See if this one shows up any better on here. May not. I don't think it's going to, so we'll bring this up here. This is Exhibit 254, I think it is, or 264. I'll confirm in a minute. The knife from the Jeep.
Jeep. Is it the Jeep knife?
Yes,
264.
264. So the MSE is right there, and China again right there.
Yes.
So basically, and again, I'll point it out on here, essentially the same spot on here, right here, just right before the handle for the MSE on one side, and then China even closer maybe to the handle on the other side, correct?
Correct.
What number is that?
That is 254.
I misspoke, I'm sorry, sir.
Yeah, that's okay.
That's what we have a clerk here.
And then finally, Exhibit 225, which is the broken knife that was found on Ms. Lilly's body. It appears it's broken, obviously, before the handle, correct?
Yeah.
All right. And I'm just going to kind of use some evidence tape here. It's broke not in an exactly straight line, correct?
No.
It's kind of crooked, and closer to where the dull side of the knife is where the it's shorter, correct?
Yes.
And longer towards the sharp side.
Right.
And if I recall correctly, and if you need to look at them again, the MSE and the China, or at least the MSE, was closer to the dull side, the non-sharpened side of the knife, correct?
Right.
And China was kind of in the middle, but almost right at the handle.
Yes.
When you compared the size of the utility knife to the size of the piece that you recovered with Stephanie Lowe's body from where she was buried, was it You said you compared the width, correct?
Right.
And was the width of the piece of knife the same as the width of the utility knife?
Yes.
How about the length? Did they have just the length of the blade, or did they have the total length of the knife? If you recall.
I don't recall.
Okay. But it was, the blade was shorter than the blade of the utility knife?
Yes.
You recall by how much?
I don't,
But shorter.
but shorter, yes.
And I know when questions were asked about what Andrea Wadinsky initially told you about missing knives, I think initially she said something about a large serrated knife and steak knives, correct?
Yes.
Right. She clearly was missing the butcher knife, correct?
Right.
And without having to bother to put on gloves again, the knife found in the Jeep, I'm not going to take it out of there, that's also not a large serrated knife, correct?
Right.
That's got a flat blade as well, correct?
Yes.
So those two knives were missing as well.
Yes.
I want to talk about, and there was some discussion about Mr. Howard in cross-examination and that. You were asked if the information that Mr. Howard provided, if that was similar to information that had been provided by Andrea Wadinsky and Richard Hawkins, Doug Koplitz, et cetera. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Did he provide additional information that they did not provide?
Yes, actually he did.
And was that information that was confirmed from the records that you are aware of?
Yes.
We were also asked some questions. I think counsel referred to it as a, quote, harebrained scheme, close quote. Remember that?
Yes.
Are you aware from your knowledge of this case, obviously you have substantial knowledge of this case, are there things that Mr. Howard could have done that could have caused an appeal issue?
Absolutely.
And are you aware, can someone appeal if they're acquitted, found not guilty?
No.
So, an appeal would only be of assistance to the defendant if he's found guilty, correct?
Correct.
So creating an appeal issue potentially is not so harebrained, is it?
No.
There were a number of questions asked of you, attempting to establish a timeline as it relates to the, from the phone records. Do you recall those questions?
Yes.
I want to actually go through some of those phone records so we can be absolutely clear of the times that there were where the defendant was not using his phone, either to text or to make phone calls. Now, the text messages and the phone records are on separate documents, correct?
Right.
All of the texts that we're going to be talking about, I'm going to show you basically about 5 pages from Exhibit 221, which are the pages that have the relevant records. I'm going to ask you some questions about them, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, Coach Honor. The first page I've got is essentially the relevant text message page, and the other 4 pages are relevant cell phone records, okay?
Okay.
What I'd like to ask you about, it appears from those records that there are a few dead periods. In other words, periods where the defendant is not either sending text messages or making phone calls. making outgoing phone calls, which is what I'm concerned about, or clearly answered cell phone calls, okay?
Right.
The first one is there a period between 12:20 and 43 seconds a.m. and 2:30 and 53 seconds a.m. Are there any calls during that, calls or text messages during that period of time?
No. Like I said, just like to say that the time for the stop of charge, I mean, he started a phone call at 12:20
Okay.
and completed it at 12:22. So there was no phone calls between 12:22
All right.
and 2:30.
Okay, thank you, Detective. And if I misstate any time periods again, let me know. Thank you. After that, it appears there's relatively regular phone calls for a period of time, correct?
Right.
The next relatively lengthy period where there are no phone calls or texts appears to start at 4:59 and 48 with which is when there is a text message, actually the 4:59 and actually the last text he does is 4:56 and 47, correct?
Right. The last text he sends is 4:56:47.
Okay. And after that, there are two text messages that are sent to him, correct?
Right.
Both of those from Andrea Wadinsky, correct?
Right.
And no phone calls after that as well until the next phone call that it appears he actually receives, that being a phone call that starts at 6 minutes or 6:26:10, correct? There are a number of phone calls at about 6:21 and 6:22 and 6:23, but none of those appear to have been answered, do they?
Correct.
Those are all very short calls from Andrea Wadinsky to the defendant's phone.
Correct.
Well, I'll object to move this strike. How does she know whether they were answered or not?
I can explain that.
Well, go ahead.
Right.
The called party number that's immediately underneath is a voicemail
Right.
that's the
the one-
voicemail number for Aerodyne or Einstein, whichever it was at the time.
That's the 1-920-707-0000.
Yes.
That means that that phone call went to voicemail.
Yes.
Thank you. But there does appear to be a phone call, there was a phone call that was answered at 6:26 and 10 seconds from Ms. Wadinsky to the defendant, correct?
Yes.
And that is a 110-second call, so about just under 2 minutes.
Right.
And then, again, there is some activity between then. There's another call that appears at 7:13. There's a text message at 7:16, and then calls at 7:34 and 7:43, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then after that, there is nothing except for two calls that we'll talk about in a moment around 10 a.m. until a text message that the defendant sends out at 12:04 and 30 seconds, correct?
Right.
And the two calls that occur at approximately 10 a.m. are those again calls that go to voicemail?
Yes.
And that's based on the fact that the call party number goes to the 920-707-0000.
Correct.
I want to talk about, that's it for the phone records. Oh, actually, no, there's one other one. There also appears then to be, then from that point on, there appears to be again relatively regular, actually there's about an hour between that text message and a phone call at 12:06 until about 1:14.
Yes.
All right. And again, the text message and the phone call are just after noon on October 10th. That is off of the Anago Tower, correct?
Right.
All right. And then the next call, which is at 1:14 and 25, is off of the Wausau Tower, correct?
Yes.
So that would be consistent with getting back to Wausau from Anago?
Yes.
Now, after that, it appears, and just to the bottom of the page of the last call that we talked about, the 1206 and 43 call, it appears there is a phone call from the defendant's phone at approximately 2:17 and 43 seconds. It starts then and ends at 2:20 and 33.
Yes.
And after that, looking again and comparing both the text message page and the phone call page, there was not another call until approximately 5:23, correct?
Correct. There's no phone or text message usage between 14:20 and 33 seconds and 17:23 and 1 second.
And that's an incoming call, but again, not one that goes to voicemail, correct?
Correct.
And it's 41 seconds in one.
Correct.
Thank you. That's it for the folks. Make sure they all go back in order. Detective, I want to ask you about a couple times, just so that we're clear. Do you know approximately how long it would take to get from the Stephanie Lowe apartment to the condo at Whitespire?
Approximately 15 minutes.
And then how about back from the condo at Whitespire to the Quick Trip that was at that point in time on Grand Avenue, the one that the defendant is seen at 6:44 a.m.?
Approximately 10 minutes.
And then from that Quick Trip back to the Stephanie Lowe apartment?
Approximately 5 minutes.
Was that Quick Trip pretty much right on the route you'd take from Whitespire to get back to the Stephanie Lowe apartment?
One of the routes you could take, yes.
So one of the routes would take you right up Grand Avenue to get to the Lowe apartment?
Yes.
And then how about from the Stephanie Lowe apartment to the store located in Weston? About how long?
I'd say roughly 20 minutes.
And to get there, would you go then past again the condo to get to the store?
You could?
That would be one of the routes again that you would take?
Yes.
There was some suggestion in cross-examination that if the defendant left the Quick Trip up on 6th Avenue, or East Wausau Avenue, I'm sorry, at 12:07, as we know, he left approximately at that time, went back to the condo and then back to Stephanie Lowe's, he'd go past Denmark by about 12:45. Do you recall that?
He could if that was a direct route, if he didn't stop anywhere.
All right. If he made other stops, you don't know if he made other stops, correct?
No, although Rich doesn't say anything about making any stops, we don't know what the defendant did in his vehicle alone.
And what you were just trying to determine is if it was possible to be there by 1:03.
Yes.
And it certainly is.
Yes.
And we also know during that period of time, shortly after he leaves Quick Trip, about 12:23, after that, until 2:17, he's not making any phone calls or texting.
Right.
Last question, Detective. I know there were a lot of questions about some of the things that the defendant said and didn't say. Did he ever, in any of his statements to you, state to you that, or anybody else, any other interview that you've listened to, state that someone else committed this homicide?
Never.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Just two, Judge, and then we're done. Hey, do you have those, Mr. Torgerson's cell phone records still before you?
I don't.
Well, there's just two questions.
Okay.
You know, we talked about these two dead periods, right? The 12:30 to 2:30 and the roughly 4:30 to 6:30 period of time, right?
I believe there's one the following afternoon as well. But
We're going to
yes.
talk about that. Let's talk about the second dead period that's roughly 4:33 p.m. Because according to the phone records, what we're calling dead periods, to 6:24:04 a.m. You with me? I'm on page 5 of Torgerson's cell records.
Hold on a second here.
Sure.
You're looking at call records or SMS?
Let's go call.
Okay.
Last call before this time where there's no activity for about an hour and 40 minutes is at 4 minutes and 33 seconds. 4:33:27. You with me? Top of page 5.
Yes.
And then the phone's he's not gonna make any calls until 6:21 or text, right?
I'm gonna have to look for them.
Okay.
So the question was between 4:33 a.m.
And 6:21.
and 6:21.
Yeah. Remember, this is the second time of no activity.
I'm seeing text messages
What time?
during that time. I'm seeing 4:46, 4:48, 4:50, 4:50, 4:54, 4:56, 4:59, 4:59.
Okay. So there's only a dead period between what, 5 and 6:14 then? Because there's a text at 6:14, right?
The text at 6:14 is incoming, I believe.
Okay. Well, here's what I'm getting at. The last phone call is at 4:33 a.m., right?
Yes.
Who's it to?
It is to Eric Mahomes.
And then his phone isn't making any calls until 6:21 a.m., right?
Right.
But he's making some texts that you just indicated,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And those are texts as between whom during that period of time?
As between Ms. Wadinsky and the defendant.
Now, we talked about, just in redirect, a period of time where there's no telephone calls between 2:17 p.m. Now I'm on October 10th, Sunday afternoon, to 5:23 p.m., right?
(2:17 p.m.), actually 2:20 would be the ending of that phone call.
Okay, so no cell phone activity between let's first look at calls, then we'll go to text.
Okay.
No cell phone activity between 2:20 p.m. on Sunday afternoon, October 10th, and 5:23 p.m., right?
Right.
Okay. No text either, right?
Stand by. It's correct. No texts either.
Okay. And then he's going to make a call at 5:20. Does he receive one, or does he receives a call at 5:23, right?
Yes.
All right. And then he's going to make a call at 6:09 p.m. that Sunday evening, right?
Yes.
And then no cell phone activity until he gets a call at 8:24:33, right?
Yes.
So so he's got some dead time that Sunday afternoon where no cell phone activity, right?
Right.
And then also in the evening.
Right.
That's all that I have.
Just one thing, Detective, you heard testimony from Mr. Hawkins about the defendant destroying and throwing out Mr. Mahomes' phone, the 8209 number,
Hey,
correct?
Judge, objection, outside the scope
No.
of recross-examination.
It's foundation for the question that is within the scope of the process.
I'll withdraw the objection.
You heard that testimony, correct?
Can you repeat the question?
The question is, you heard the testimony from Mr. Hawkins about the cell phone of Mr. Mahomes being destroyed and thrown out by the defendant as they were driving back from Movino after burying the body, correct?
I heard him discuss a cell phone being destroyed. I don't know that he specifically said it was Mr. Mahomes.
Okay. Do you have a belief or an opinion as to why the defendant would have been calling repeatedly to Mr. Mahomes' phone on the morning of October 10th?
Objection, speculation.
Sustained.
I don't have any other questions.
Step down.
I just wanted to be sure.
Next witness?
Thank you, Judge. The next witness for the state is Vicki Pinch.
Thank you.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record? And that does move around,
Okay.
so just to make sure we found you.
My name is Vicki Lynn Pinch, P-I-N-T-S-C-H.
And I probably should have asked you to spell your first name. Is your first name V-I-C-K-I?
It is
Thank you. What's your current occupation?
the owner of Pinch's Hardware in Townsend.
When you say Townsend, is that here in Wisconsin?
Yes, it is.
Is that pretty close to the Wabeno area?
Yes.
And how long have you been the owner of that store?
It'll be 40 years next year.
So it's safe to say that you were the owner of Pinch's Hardware Store on October 10th of 2010?
Yes.
And based on an investigation that was happening, did two detectives come and meet with you on February 13th of 2013?
Yes, they did.
And were they asking you specifically about the purchase of a shovel?
Yes.
And did they ask you for some receipt rolls to confirm the purchase of a shovel from your store?
Yes.
And were you able to provide that to them?
Yes.
And if I were to show you a copy of that receipt, would you be able to identify it?
Yes.
Okay, it's not a great copy. I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 272.
I'm sorry, what number was it?
272?
Wait, 217 or 272?
272.
Okay.
Is that a fair and accurate copy of a receipt that would have been provided by your store?
Yes, it is.
And are you able to see, as I said, it's kind of a junky copy, but are you able to see the date and time on it?
Yes.
What is the date on that receipt?
10/10/10,
And if you can make out the time, what time did that take place?
10:04 a.m.
Thank you, may I publish?
Right.
I should ask you, if you need me to give it back to you, are you able to tell what, oh wow, that is not good. You know, if there's no objection, can I just send this around to the jury? It's kind of a terrible copy.
No objection.
Would you be able to tell who made the sale of that shovel on October 10th, 2010 at 10:04 a.m.?
Yes, it would be written on the, it would be stamped on the receipt.
Did you have an employee around that time named Tasha?
Yes.
Okay. And is that the person who's listed on that receipt?
Yes.
Based on your contact with the detectives on February 13th of 2013, did you try to find the matching SKU number to confirm which shovel was purchased?
Yes, we did.
And now, throughout the course of this investigation, are you familiar with the SKU number of 190090?
Yes.
And does that correspond to a shovel that you would have sold in 2010?
Yes, it does.
And I always say shovel. Technically, it's a spade, right?
Correct.
Okay. What's the difference?
It's a rounded point. A spade has a rounded point, and a shovel is more of a flat end.
Okay. Is there something that a spade does better than a shovel would?
A spade for digging. A shovel would be more like a green kind of a shovel, or it would be harder to get into the dirt or something.
Okay. And again, I believe the detectives followed up with you in January 20th of 2014. Is that correct?
Yes.
And were you able to, at that point, confirm not the exact shovel that was purchased, but the same make and model?
Yes.
And if I showed you that shovel, would you be able to confirm it as the same shovel that was purchased on October 10th? By make and model number?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you what's been marked now as Exhibit 273. May I? And looking at this shovel, and please take your time, would you be able to confirm that that's the same make and model of the shovel that was sold on October 10th of 2010 based on the receipt?
It's the easiest to tell it by the SKU.
Use it up. Does it not have a
It
SKU?
looks the same. I know it's a wooden handled shovel with metal on the end. It's exactly like this.
Well, we can ask we can ask the next witness to confirm that it is in fact the same one. I think
Yes.
he's the one who actually helps.
Yes.
Purportedly.
Okay. It looks the same.
Okay. And you were not there.
No, I was not.
Okay. Did you look at this SKU here? Did you have the chance to see that, or was your hand covering that?
I don't know. I know our SKU is the 190090.
Okay, and that SKU is not on here.
I didn't think I saw that.
Okay,
No.
we'll confirm that up with the next witness.
Okay. Now, that could be the model number, though.
Okay, with that, if you.
I am not sure of what the model number was, but I do, it's easy to find in the True Value catalog because the picture and the SKU is in the True Value catalog online, and it will tell you the model number on that.
Well, I happen to have that, so would that help you to look at that?
Sure.
It's 2384. Okay, I'm going to show you what's marked as Exhibit 274 now. And what is this?
That is an Ames True Temper shovel, and it is the right SKU, and the model number says 158. I can't, it's very small.
Does it say 600?
600, yes.
And then, again,
So
just
that
to
would be,
confirm that number?
yes, it is. It is the same number.
Okay, so that would tell you that it's the same make and model, same shovel,
Yes.
spade? Okay.
Yes.
All right, I'd ask for admission of the last three exhibits. I believe the numbers are 273, 272, and 274.
No objection, Your Honor.
They are received.
I don't have any other questions for you now, thank you.
Okay. Do you want?
I can pick those up.
I have no questions either, thank you.
Here's these two. Ma'am, would you mind handing me those as well?
Oh,
Those
sure.
are for you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I have no objection to her being released from her subpoena.
Done.
You're released. Thank you.
The state's next witness is Dale Moravec.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony about to give you the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you. And then you sit your hand up. Watch your step. Just put the microphone down and speak right into it.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Good morning.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Dale John Morvik, Moravec.
Thank you. And I will try to keep this very brief. Mr. Moravec, did you work at a place called Finch's Hardware back in October of 2010?
Yes, I did.
And did you work every Sunday?
Every Sunday.
So if October 10th fell on a Sunday, would you have been working?
Yes, I will.
And what time of day were you working on Sundays, if you recall?
I always open at 7 till, I think we close at 1 at that time.
So at 10 o'clock-ish in the morning, you would have been there?
Yes.
Do you recall on that date at around 10 o'clock in the morning, two men coming in to purchase what I keep calling a shovel, but what I've learned is now a spade?
That is correct.
And that was a long time ago.
Yes, it was.
And why specifically did you remember these two men coming in to buy a spade around 10 o'clock that day?
Well, the biggest thing that stuck out was the tattoos.
And let's talk about that for a minute. The two men that came in, though you mentioned tattoos, did one of them have tattoos or both?
Just one.
And was he tall or short?
He was about 6'2", just a little bit taller than me.
Okay. And you said a tattoo or tattoos. Where were the visible tattoos that you could see?
On his arms, plus the one that stuck out the most is on his head.
On his head?
Well, it looked like the spider web.
And did you see any on the person's neck at all?
Not that I was really aware of. I guess I was more looking at his head.
Understood. And the other person that came in with this person, was there anything that stood out to you about that person?
Yes, he was very tall.
The other person was tall?
Correct.
Okay. And were either of these people of color?
Yes.
And not to make any generalizations, but in the area of Townsend, Wisconsin, did a lot of people of different ethnic varieties come into your store?
Not a real lot.
Now, was the reason that you noticed these two, did they ask you for any assistance in purchasing anything?
Yes, he did.
Did you talk to the spiderweb tattoo person or the other person?
Spider web.
And was the spiderweb tattoo person white or a black person or something else?
No, he was white.
Okay. And when you helped him, what, if anything, did he ask you?
He just asked me if I could show him where there were some shovels.
Did he indicate to you at all what he needed it for?
No.
And again, I know this is a long time ago, but do you by chance recognize the guy that you sold to during the court meeting?
Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, no.
Okay.
I'm going to stipulate to identification.
That's fine. I do not have, well, actually, first, before I go, it's very important. Do you recognize, and again, long time ago, recognize this to be the shovel that you sold to those two gentlemen?
Sure looks familiar, yes.
Okay. But you were the one who actually made the transaction. That was a young girl by the name of Tasha, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I have no other questions. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have no questions. Thank you.
You can be released.
Next witness, Your Honor, will be Robert Sanders.
Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony that you give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Yes, sir. My name is Robert Sanders, Sanders.
And Sanders, are you currently employed?
No, sir. I'm retired now.
Prior to being in that fortunate position, how were you employed?
I was employed at the Wisconsin State Crime Lab here in Wausau, Wisconsin.
And what was your job at the crime lab?
At the crime lab, I was a forensic photographer, and I also had additional duties as a crime scene response team leader and crime scene response photographer.
Right. And what is a crime scene response team leader do?
The crime scene response team leader is basically responsible for assisting local law enforcement agency in the processing of a crime scene, and the overall supervision of anybody on the team.
And how long were you employed at the State Crime Laboratory?
Approximately 24 years, sir.
Prior to that, how were you employed?
Prior to that, I was employed in the U.S. Army as an Army CID agent, and I was stationed at Fort Gillem at the Army Crime Lab.
What is Army CID?
Army CID would be like the equivalent of the detective unit in the police department.
So, what did it stand for?
It stands for U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division.
So kind of like what those of us who watch NCIS, that's the Navy's version.
That's the Navy's version, correct,
All
sir?
right. Great. And what did you do with CID?
With CID, when I first started out, I was working in the street investigating felony offenses, processing crime scenes.
So you've been processing crime scenes for quite some time.
Yes, sir.
And were you involved, did you become involved in the case involving the first disappearance and eventually the homicide investigation involving Stephanie Lowe?
Yes, sir.
And you were involved in a number of things, correct?
Yes, sir.
I believe you did some analysis of the Skeeter boat that we've heard some testimony about here, correct?
Yes, sir.
And also some analysis of the Jeep, the defendant's 1995 Jeep Grand Cherokee, correct?
Yes, sir. That was submitted to the crime lab for analysis.
And as it relates to those two things, they didn't find anything in either of those that were of any specific evidentiary value, correct?
I don't know for sure about the two samples of DNA evidence. I didn't see the reports on those.
But as far as you know, nothing really had any. You didn't find anything that you thought was significant evidentiary value.
I didn't think anything was significant. We found some trace evidence. It was basically sweeping the vehicle with a vacuum cleaner. I just turned that back over to the submitting agency.
And both of those were submitted well after October 10th of 2010, correct?
Yes, sir.
So is it surprising to you that you didn't find anything of any significant evidentiary value under those circumstances?
No, sir.
Now, you were called out again in September of 2014 in regard to this case, correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. That's to go to the site where the body of Stephanie Lowe was recovered, correct?
Yes, sir.
And what was your job, what was your responsibility at that crime scene?
At that crime scene, my primary responsibility was as a team photographer.
And did you take photos at that scene?
Yes, sir.
Approximately how many photos did you take?
156.
We're not going to have you go through all 156, okay? But there are some I want to talk about. May I approach you? Showing you, Mr. Sanders, what have been marked for identification as exhibits 203 and 204. I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions immediately because I'm going to put these up on the Alamo, but just can you tell me what these are?
Yes, sir. Prosecution exhibits 203 and 204 is looking up and down the dirt road adjacent to where the gravesite was.
Let me put these up if I may. Any objection?
None.
Show. And I'm sorry, Counsel. Okay. Starting, Mr. Sanders, with Exhibit 203, just tell us what we're seeing here.
Okay, basically, we're looking down the dirt road. I believe this would be facing west, and the gravesite would have been off to the left.
And this kind of shows, does this give you an idea what type of area this is?
Yes, this was a heavily wooded area in the forest.
And then showing you Exhibit 204, what can you tell us about that exhibit?
This is looking in the opposite direction down the dirt road, and the gravesite would have been on the south side of the dirt road.
All right. And again, shows a heavily wooded forest area.
Yes, sir.
Move the admission of exhibits 203 and 204, Your Honor.
No objection, Judge. Received.
I'm going to show you a series of photos marked exhibits 205, 206, 207, 208, 209, and 210. Just want you to take a look at them, and then I want to just ask you if you recognize those photos, and then we will put them up on the elbow and ask about each one individually. Do you recognize each of those photos?
Yes, sir. I recognize prosecution exhibits marked as 205 through 210.
Thank you. They have published, Your Honor. You may read them, obviously. And I will show them to counsel before I do. So starting with Exhibit 205, what can you tell us about that? What does that show us?
Prosecution exhibit 205 is a photograph of the grave site that was covered with a tarp at the time we arrived.
All right, so this is how it essentially looked at the time you arrived?
Essentially, yes, sir.
All right. And we heard testimony yesterday from Detective Holz that law enforcement had done some excavation before you arrived to make sure that this was in fact the burial site, and that's what's being covered by the tarp is the excavation that they had done?
Yes, sir. My understanding was it was put there to protect it from the weather.
And you see just behind that blue tarp a rock. Do you see that?
Yes, sir.
And as you understand it, that was the rock that came out of the area where the excavation was done?
My understanding was, yes, that had been placed over the area where her head was underneath the rock.
Move the admission of Exhibit 205, Your Honor.
No objection. It is received.
I'm showing you what has been marked for identification as Exhibit 206. Can you tell me what that is?
That is a photograph that was taken to show the approximate depth of about 1 foot.
All right. And that was the depth that law enforcement had excavated and was able to identify that this was in fact the burial site of Stephanie Lowe?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so puts the body as being buried, at least the top of the body, about a foot below ground.
Yes, sir.
Move the admission of Exhibit 206.
No objection. Received.
And then Exhibit 207, that appears to just be a closer up that makes it clear what that depth is.
Yes, sir. This is a photograph that's just taken closer up.
Move the admission of Exhibit 207.
No objection. Received.
Showing you what has been marked for identification as Exhibit 208. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes, prosecution exhibit 208 is a photograph of the rock with a scale to indicate how large the rock is.
And again, that's a scale, it's a foot. It appears to be somewhat larger than a foot in width.
Yes, sir.
And move the admission of Exhibit 208.
No objection. Received.
And then 209, what does that show us?
Prosecution exhibit 209 is another photograph of the rock with a scale held in a vertical position.
And it appears it's a little bit more than a foot in height then as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Move the admission of Exhibit 209.
None. No objection. Received.
And finally, Exhibit number 210, what can you tell us about that?
Prosecution exhibit number 210 is a photograph of the area after we had set up stakes to indicate where we would excavate.
And so that was the sum total of the area that you would excavate to make sure that you recovered everything that was of evidentiary value?
Yes, sir.
And is that how you understand from your training and your long experience what you want to do?
Yes, sir.
Move the admission of Exhibit 210.
No objection. Received.
Mr. Sanders, once you arrived, who was in charge of essentially the excavation process?
Tiffany would have been in charge of the excavation process. Wausau Police Department would have been in charge of the overall crime scene.
And Tiffany is Tiffany Vickman,
Yes, sir.
and she was another member of the response team?
Yes, Tiffany Vickman was the team leader for the response team.
And were you present during the excavation process?
Yes, sir, I was present during the entire time.
And how long did it take approximately to excavate that site?
I believe we arrived about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and we departed shortly after midnight the following day.
So a significant period of time?
Yes, sir.
All right. And were you able to recover the team to the extent that you are able to tell us everything that you felt was of evidentiary value?
Yes, sir.
Were there any tarps recovered inside in the excavation site?
I do not recall any tarp being recovered, sir.
Were there any items of clothing that were recovered from the site that were not on the body of Stephanie Lowe, if you recall?
I'm trying to remember if the jeans were separate from the body or not.
Okay, all right. And I believe from autopsy it was indicated they were not, that they were on the body. So anything else that you can recall? If you
I
did?
don't recall anything else offhand.
Okay, all right. No further questions for Mr. Sanders.
Very briefly. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
I just got to ask you two quick lines of inquiry, okay, Mr. Sanders?
Yes, sir.
I saw on what was 210, Exhibit 210, those stakes that you place around the excavation site, right?
Yes, sir.
And I think you said in response to Mr. DeFore's questions, that's part of your training because you're then directing a certain process by which the excavation should occur, right?
The general area, yes, sir.
And a certain process involving a lot of, trenching along the outside of the stakes of that type?
Basically, if you'll see there's 8 stakes. 4 of the stakes mark the inner perimeter, and 4 of the stakes mark the outer perimeter of the trench that we're going to take.
Right, and then you're gonna do the trenching and move in very carefully to the body area, right?
We would dig the trench so that we could dig down so that the body, in effect, is sitting on a pedestal. And as we do that, then we'd have a sifter off to the side, and all the dirt coming out would be sifted in the sifter.
Here's all I'm getting at with the stakes and the trenching. You're making an effort to make sure you're not destroying any physical evidence during the excavation process, right?
Yes, sir.
One last thing. Through both your military training and then, how long were you with the department after the military?
24 years, sir.
You have become familiar with something called blood stain pattern analysis?
I was not trained in that, sir.
Oh, okay. You don't know anything about that?
No, sir.
Okay. Then, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bell.
We call Benjamin Visterke, Your Honor.
swear that to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Mr. DeFore, is this going to be a lengthier witness or not? Mr. DeFore?
I'm sorry.
Is this going to be a lengthier witness or not? We'll take a break
Not
before or after.
for direct, Your Honor, will not be that long.
Not gonna be long.
Okay, so we'll take a break after he's done.
Could you state your name for the record, please? Spell your last name for the court reporter.
Benjamin Destarke, Destaercke.
How are you employed, sir?
I am employed at the State Crime Laboratory in Madison, Wisconsin.
And in what capacity?
I'm a DNA analyst.
And were you still employed in February of 2015?
Yes, I was.
How long have you been employed as a DNA analyst for the State Crime Lab?
Approximately 10 years.
And Mr. Destarke, why don't you tell us a little bit about your educational background?
I have 2 Bachelor of Science degrees, one from the University of Wisconsin-Green Bay in human biology, and the other from Virginia Commonwealth University in forensic science.
And can you tell us your training in the area of DNA analysis?
When I was hired at the State Crime Laboratory, we underwent approximately a 10-month-long training program that was provided by the National Forensic Science Technology Center, which entailed going through the processes that we would deal with in our job at the State Crime Laboratory. This would be the extraction of DNA, quantitation of DNA, amplification, and the typing of the DNA profiles. We also underwent forensic serology, which is the identification of bodily fluids. And from there, we learned all the other steps we would in the process, statistical analysis, report writing, and things to that nature.
And Mr. Destarke, we heard earlier in this case from Catherine Cole about how you do DNA analysis. So I'm not going to ask you a lot of questions about the whole process, but I do want to ask you about a couple of things that you actually did work on in this case, all right?
Sure.
You were the second analyst that worked in this case, correct?
Yes, I was.
And that was after Ms. Cole was promoted to a supervisor position.
Yes, it was.
And the main thing I want to ask you about relate to some testing you did, DNA testing, relating to samples that came from the autopsy of Stephanie Loy. Okay?
Okay.
These would be these two reports here. Right, and then February 12th is the original, January 24th is the corrected for February 12th. Okay? These two, and then the second one is the statement. Now, you received some samples from the autopsy, correct?
Yes, I did.
What did you receive, if you recall?
They were labeled as tissue samples.
All right. Did you also receive some fingernails?
Yes, I did.
And may I approach, Your Honor? May. So, Mr. Destarke, I'm showing you what have been marked for identification. There's exhibits 275 and 276. Do you recognize those items?
Yes, I do.
All right. And exhibit 275 was your original report as it relates to the testing you did on those tissue samples and those fingernails?
Yes, it does.
All right. And that's dated February 12th of 2015?
Yes.
All right. And then, as we heard from Ms. Cole, there are updated population statistics.
Yes.
All right. And so based on that, you did a new report or a corrected report in January of 2017, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't retest anything at that point in time, correct?
No, I did
You
not.
just updated it based upon the new statistics.
Yes.
All right. So let's talk about those. First thing I want to talk about are the fingernail clippings. And you had clippings from both the right hand and the left hand, correct?
There were 5 clippings in the jar.
Okay. And did you test those to see if there was any blood present?
Yes, I did.
And what did you do to test for blood?
I took a swabbing from all of the fingernails cuttings and then did a presumptive test to test for the blood.
And what was the result of that presumptive test?
It was very weak positive.
Sir?
It was very weak positive.
Did you do any further testing of it? For blood?
No, I did not.
Why not?
I didn't want to use up any of the remaining sample that could possibly be on the swab. I just wanted to see if I could develop a DNA profile from it.
Were you able to recover a DNA profile from the fingernail clippings?
No, I was not.
Now, you understand, did you know that the body had been in the ground for approximately 4 years from the time of death to the time that it was recovered?
That was my understanding.
Can that affect the results or the ability to obtain DNA from a sample?
It's possible, yes.
Why is that?
It could be determined by the conditions it is in. If it is in a soil environment, that could hamper the DNA testing. Heat, humidity, moisture, any of those factors could affect our ability to develop a DNA profile.
And can it totally eliminate the ability to develop a DNA profile?
That is possible, yes.
And did you also received, I believe, a shirt?
Yes.
All right. And did you attempt to obtain any DNA profile from that shirt?
Yes, I did.
And the shirt, as you understood it, was in that site where the body had been buried for approximately 4 years?
That was my understanding, yes.
And were you able to generate a DNA profile from that shirt?
No, I was not.
And again, the conditions certainly could have affected the ability to obtain a DNA profile from that shirt.
That is possible.
Now, did you also received some tissue samples?
Yes, I did.
And you understood those came from the autopsy of Stephanie Lowe, correct?
Yes.
And your attempt was to try and determine if, in fact, those tissue samples matched the sample that had been obtained by Ms. Cole from a toothbrush, correct?
Yes.
And that was an attempt to determine was this Stephanie Lowe or not, correct?
Yes, it was.
Now, tissue is normally going to have a full DNA profile on it, correct?
Yes, it's possible.
So if you took a piece of my hand here, you can get a full DNA profile of me from it, correct?
Yes.
Were you able to obtain a complete DNA profile from this tissue sample that was taken from the body that was believed to be Stephanie Lowe?
No, I was not.
What were you able to obtain?
I obtained a partial profile, which means that I didn't have all the markers or places that we were looking for. They weren't fully represented.
So you were not able to determine that this was, in fact, based upon a sample that came right from the body of Stephanie Lowe, you could not make a full match that this was, in fact, the same DNA as found on Stephanie Lowe's toothbrush.
The profile that I was able to develop was consistent with the profile from the toothbrush.
But not a match.
No, not a match everywhere.
And based upon your information and the most updated and the most recent findings, what were the percentages or the ratio that you were able to determine as far as that match?
The probability of randomly selecting the observed STR DNA profile from a population of unrelated individuals was approximately 1 in 1.9 billion.
I move the admission of exhibits 275 and 276.
Yes.
Any objection?
None, sir.
May received.
So, and what is the reason you would believe that tissue sample may not have been able to obtain a match on it? Why?
The condition of the tissue sample, if it was breaking down, some of the cells could have broke down. The amount of material that also was on there, the fatty material, just not being able to separate that out, those kind of conditions would hamper the ability to generate a DNA profile.
And with the fact that the body had been buried, is that almost 4 years, is that part of the reason why it would have broken down?
Yes, that's a possibility.
And is that the same reason why the other samples you may not have been able to obtain DNA profiles from?
Yes, that's possible.
Thank you. Could there have been, and this is the last question, as it relates to those fingernail clippings that you tested, could there have been DNA on them when the body was buried that you were not able to find 4 years later?
I'll object on speculation grounds.
I believe you can answer that. I don't think it's speculation.
Overall.
It's possible, but I can't say conclusively if there was.
You can't say there was DNA previously, but you can't eliminate the possibility there was DNA.
I could not eliminate that possibility.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
You can't eliminate the possibility there wasn't DNA under the fingernails, right?
No, I can't.
Okay. Let me ask you about the fingernails, sir. Good morning.
Morning.
You did a presumptive test for the presence of blood on the fingernail clippings before you did the DNA analysis, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And if I read your report right, may I approach, Judge?
May.
Thank you. If I read your report, I'm just going to go off the corrected one after the new stats came out.
Sure.
Okay. If I read your report right, a presumptive test indicated the possible presence of blood on the fingernail clippings. No confirmatory test was performed. I have that right?
Yes.
The only other thing I want to ask you about in your work in the case was something that wasn't covered on your direct examination, and that was, do you remember receipt of a Don Julio tequila bottle?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And I'm going to ask you have this. I'm going to mark this. May I approach, sir?
May.
What was the number on that? I'm sorry.
Defense 113.
Okay.
Can we show you? I'm going to move 275 and 276 out of your way.
Okay.
Defense Exhibit 275 and 276, and ask you to take a look at moving State 275 and 276 away, and ask you to look at Defense 113. Okay?
Okay.
That report as it relates to the Don Julio tequila bottle?
Yes, it is. It's a report dated January 23rd, 2017.
Now that I gave you what's I think labeled the corrected report. You did a prior report that has the same information except without the updated statistics, population statistics, right?
Yes.
All right. Same information. correct?
Yes, same information.
All right. So it's my understanding that you were provided by law enforcement two types of swabs, or two swabs. One swab from the body of the tequila bottle, correct?
I took that swab at the laboratory.
Okay, I'm sorry. And then so you were just provided the bottle, right?
I was provided the bottle and a swabbing from the mouth area.
Okay. So you were given a swabbing from the mouth area of the tequila bottle, and you yourself did a swabbing of the tequila bottle, right?
Yes.
Like what, the side of it where somebody would grab it?
Yes.
Okay. Now, if somebody wanted to do fingerprints on that bottle, latent fingerprints analysis, if you did that latent fingerprints analysis before the swabbing, you'd screw up the swabbing, right? You got to kind of pick one or the other, right?
Yes.
All right. Okay. Now, you also were provided a DNA profile for the defendant, Kristopher Torgerson, correct?
Yes, I was.
That either you or Catherine Cole developed from a buccal swab from Torgerson, right?
Yes.
All right. You were able to determine a DNA profile from the swabbing of the bottle, tequila bottle itself, right?
Yes, I was.
And from the mouth area, correct?
Yes.
And what did you conclude concerning those two DNA profiles? I only care about how they relate to Kristopher Torgerson's DNA profile.
He was excluded from both of those profiles.
Okay, I'm going to move 113 in.
Your Honor, subject to the same comments I made about an earlier DNA test result, I don't have an objection, but there's parts of it that I don't believe are admissible or relevant.
Agreed. Well, let me clarify that so the jury is clear. There is information about what?
There's information contained in here about other DNA profiles.
Fair enough?
Yes.
All right. So Judge, subject to that redaction, I'm going to, at the appropriate time, I'm going to move 113 in.
And again, no objection, subject to that.
I have no further questions of this witness.
You want to move that now or later?
I'll move it in now with the understanding that I will work on a redaction with the state.
Okay. It'll be received and the redacted version will just have part after.
Yes, sir.
And just one question, as far as the DNA profile, you were able to obtain a partial DNA profile, you were able to obtain from both the mouth and the body of that Don Julio bottle. You have no idea, no way of knowing when that DNA profile was left on that bottle?
No, I do not.
Nothing else?
No, sir.
Thank you. You're excused?
Yes. He's released from the subpoena as far as the state.
And the defense.
Okay, and we'll take a break right now for about 15 minutes. You may be seated. Okay, if you don't have any matter, we'll be recessed for 15 minutes.
Can we folks for a minute on scheduling? If you have a moment?
We're recessed, Rob.
Yeah.